Hillary Peters is the Director of Land Stewardship at Lake Forest Open Lands. A graduate of Northern Michigan University with a degree in environmental science, Hillary's journey into environmental stewardship began in her childhood hometown of Mundelein, Illinois. Hillary's leadership encompasses working with professional crews to engaging with volunteer groups, private landowners, and civic groups, fostering a sense of community in conservation stewardship. Through Open Land's land stewardship initiatives, Hillary strives to ensure a harmonious balance between conservation and community engagement. And with that, please enjoy the presentation.
So thank you so much for having me here this evening. My name is Hillary Peters, and I'm going to be presenting on native plant landscaping. I want to do a special shout out to Native Plant Month. April is known as Native Plant Month. And so what a great way to round out this month with this presentation. Also a great way to round out the exhibit here at the History Center dealing with climate change and ways that we can take action against it. So who am I? It's always nice to know who is talking at you for 45 minutes. My name is Hillary Peters. I am the Director of Land Stewardship at Lake Forest Open Lands Association. I went to Northern Michigan University and got my degree in environmental science. My specific emphasis at the time was water resources. And when I came out of college, my first job was at the Chicago Botanic Garden as this fabulously long title, Prairie River Management Technician. And so I was really there for the river management portion, but it ended up being a lot more prairie. But that served me well because it sparked this passion for plants that were native to this area that I grew up in. I grew up in Mundelein. My father is from Lake Forest, so I have a lot of connection to this specific space. And most of my career has also been in this surrounding area. Cook County Forest Preserves, to name one of them. Native Restoration Services is another one you all know. Davie Resource Group. I could put on so many different hats and t-shirts with names, but just trying to highlight the fact that I'm highly specialized in this particular region. I live in Chicago, which is sometimes surprising to people because they say, oh, you love natural areas and native plants so much. Why do you live in a big urban environment? Well, because I also love culture and people and food. And there's also amazing gardens and natural spaces in and around Chicago. I am a bike enthusiast, and my happy places are at home with my cat and my husband, Charlie. He's up at top in the canoe there, and exploring outside. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you to my presentation, Friendly Yards. This was big fun for me. I made this beautiful animation happen. Thank you, Instagram. So today we are going to learn how incorporating native plants into your landscape benefits the environment, combats climate change, and improves stormwater management around your home. This is a very loaded topic. I felt like I could do 3 different presentations all mixed into one. So things are brief, but of course there is time for questions, and I have some business cards if you need to contact me afterwards. So you're just itching to know. So let's move along. I would like to ground us a little bit in history, time, space, how we got here. As I kind of walked around, I noticed a lot of this information is already on the walls, and maybe you already know some of this, but I'm going to do a little bit of repeating or maybe some learning for the first time for some of you. So 85% of Illinois at one point was covered in glaciers. The last one retreating about 10,000 years ago, going all the way back to almost 2 million years ago. These glaciers, they really shaped the landscape that we see here today. The topography and the types of soils that we have are all because of these glaciers using their force, coming through, scraping things up and moving along. Retreating, freezing, retreating, freezing. It is, of course, something that we all need to recognize and understand that this is the ancestral homeland of the Council of Three Fires. That includes the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi people, but this was also a place that was important to other tribes for trade, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, and Sauk nations. These people, people lived in the Chicagoland area continuously for what we know as the last 10,000 years. So probably right around when that last glacier moved out, people were here making a dent on this landscape, shaping also what we see today. The native peoples, they settled in this area, they hunted, they gathered, and they established their own form of agriculture. And as many of you know, fire is an important practice here in restoration, but that is a practice that we have because of Native peoples' continuation of the natural fires that were started by lightning strikes. So then we fast forward way far in time to the 1830s, when we have European settlers kind of coming in and making claims to the land. Those native peoples were pushed away, and we now have a whole new, I guess, I don't want to say regime, but we have a whole new landscape of people coming on. And so when people came here by the 1860s, a lot of the land around here was owned by private individuals. They were changing the landscapes, turning them into more fragmented pieces of agriculture, separating these natural spaces by trails and roadways. And they immensely changed ecosystem dynamics by creating ditches and draining wetlands. So where we are today, as you can see based on this map, is we are primarily agriculture. Where we were before 1850 was forest and grasslands. Those were the dominant ecosystem types that we saw here in Illinois. And to throw some numbers at you that might feel a little sad, but hopefully today's presentation changes that, gives some action and inspiration, is that Illinois has lost over 90% of its wetlands, 99% of its prairies, and 80% of its forests. Those are shockingly large numbers, and they are reflected there on that map, I would say very well. I've seen another map that shows a very similar picture from the 1850s, and then it shows what we have left of all of those native landscapes today, and it is but a pinprick. And so it's a very shocking realization of what we have left and why we need to protect it. So part of the reason we're here today is because of climate change. And climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. Now, some people might say, well, that's happened naturally over time, and you are correct. But what is happening right now currently is at a much faster rate. This quote comes directly from NASA. And so, of course, we've had some natural shifts in weather, but at one point, those shifts in weather, they went from a 5-degree difference over 5,000 years. Right now, we have sped up warming for the next century, at least 20 times that rate, which is shocking, scary, and it makes people feel like, well, what are we going to do about this? A lot of times we hear facts about global climate change, and that can feel a little distant, but things that we can expect via global climate change is increased flooding, rainfall, drought, and other environmental changes, such as resource depletion and biodiversity loss. Climate change not only brings stress to the environment, but it brings stress to us. We will see an increase in heat-related injuries, and we will also see an increase in mental health issues related to climate change. Because what is happening with these significant events is causing burden to people. They're losing their homes, they're losing their livelihoods. So there's no way that we can't feel that here. So to bring it home a little bit, here in Illinois, we are already seeing the impacts on everything from agriculture productivity and food access to public health hazards and diminishing natural resources. weather patterns have shifted significantly in the past century, with Illinois dealing with both warmer temperatures and more precipitation. So that is going to mean increased flooding and a shift in our planting zones. So the first chart over here is showing billion-dollar disaster relief. And I want to say, when did that start? 1980, and it's going all the way until 2020. You can see around 2010 that these billion-dollar disaster relief issues have picked up speed, and this is mainly happening in Southern Illinois. So again, it feels kind of far away, but it is our water that's heading downstream to those people. And then we have the issue of our plant hardiness zone. I will say I'm more of an ecoregions kind of gal, but I will talk about plant hardiness zones here because we are seeing a shift due to temperature changes here in Illinois. The plant hardiness zone has shifted from 5B to 6A, and this is mainly due to the mild winters that we're seeing. The change in winter temperature across Illinois brings significant shifts in plant and animal habitat stability. And these warmer winters and more precipitation in Illinois may be more conducive to certain non-native and invasive species, pests, and diseases. So this is hitting us at home. We are seeing this currently, and it at some point is going to have to make us shift the way that we plant here. I will say the shift hasn't been that big yet. A lot of those plants kind of remain the same, but that's not the point. So a lot of us in here are smart and we have great ability to understand what is happening, but we might be wondering why we have all of this information coming at us. Why are humans not changing their ways? Why are we not feeling this risk? And I spent a good long time with the American Psychological Association document that is 230 pages long, trying to figure it out. And the easiest way to explain it, I believe, from what I read, is that risk perception is influenced by associative and affective driven processing more so than analytical processing. So associative processing system is older, automatic, and fast. It's kind of something we're just born with. And when we see something, we feel that risk right away. Analytical processing, on the other hand, though, it works by algorithms and rules. And these things, they take time. You have to make a real conscious effort to soak them in, understand them, and then also make that change off of them. And so a lot of times when we talk about climate change, you have climate scientists who have been trained in these necessary information, and they understand the data and they have had the time to really have it sink in. And so that's why they get so frustrated. They say, I understand, I know what these data in this graph means, but why don't you get it? And it's because most of us are working off of that kind of automatic drive of risk. And when we talk about global climate change, it feels so far away, or it feels so futuristic. So this takes time. And what's exciting about being here tonight is that each one of you is an individual who saw this. You came together with your community and you're gonna make some kind of adaptation to it. So tonight is exciting in the fact that you, just simply by being here, learning these things, are making that conscious effort. So I'm very excited. So like I said, this could be a 3-part different series on these topics, but I'm going to jump into our first kind of action item, and that is stormwater management at your house. So there are many ways to manage stormwater around your home, but I'm going to talk about 4 of them, and most of them are pretty simple. The 4th one takes a little more effort, and it got its own slide. So stormwater management, we can look at things like rain barrels, permeable pavements, and pollution prevention. It was really exciting actually to walk in and see the History Center's new development going on here. And I went and I read some of the signs back there. And the first thing I picked up on is there is permeable pavement coming in here. Wow, directly related. So I'm actually going to start with rain barrels though, because that's where I am on my sheet. So rain barrels are easy, they're cost effective. And Lake Forest, the city of Lake Forest has a lot of support for rain barrels. Through my research on rain barrels, which is not that deep of a dive, not like the psychology report. I found that the city of Lake Forest has information on their website that will direct you to how to properly set up a rain barrel at your house, which is pretty easy. It's right by your downspout. It has a valve. You can get that water, use it on your lawn, use it on your garden. But then they also have a link to where you can buy a rain barrel at a reduced cost. Now, I'm not saying that that's happening right now, so use the power of the internet and look it up. But I believe there is some kind of spring sale happening, so don't quote me on it. Please don't come after me. The next way is through permeable pavements. Permeable pavement is kind of this newer trend in landscaping. I failed to mention I was in landscaping for the last 3 years, so you're seeing it a lot more in newer developments. You're seeing it a lot more in people who are trying to be eco-friendly, and they are a really great alternative to our normal paved parking lots and asphalt drives that we have and we see all around our communities. So they refer to a porous material that is an alternative to paved surfaces. There are many different kinds of permeable pavements, and they can be made of gravel, porous asphalt, or bricks with gaps. So if you're interested as to what's going in here at the History Center, it's the beautiful bricks with gaps. I love them. They make a great landscape feature. You can oftentimes seed in lawn into them, and so it creates this beautiful color juxtaposition of the brown with the green. What these permeable pavements are allowing for, though, is a reestablishment of the natural hydrological cycles and the ability to recharge the groundwater. So with regular paved surfaces, when we have water coming in via rain, big floods, what have you, it's rolling off and it's going right into our drainage system. These permeable pavements are actually taking that water, pulling them down into the soil and recharging our groundwater, which is a really great alternative to just dumping them down the river with all the extra pollutants. And then the easiest, most cost-effective way to help with stormwater management around your home is just pollution prevention. And so that is something we can do every single day. It's something we can do by picking up trash around our house, in our communities. I know a lot of people around here go on walks. Bring a little bag with you, pick up the garbage. Maybe you have a picker. We're gonna try to use fertilizers only when necessary. We are gonna check the weather before we spray any kind of pesticides. We don't want that stuff rolling off into our drainage systems. And in the winter, we're gonna use salt sparingly. It is amazing. Like I said, I was in landscaping, so that also meant I was snow plowing. And with snow plowing comes salt. Salt is incredibly, I'm just going to say it, disgusting. It's gross to work with. It gets in your hands. It takes all the moisture out of you. It's quite corrosive. I lost a couple Leatherman, multi-tools to opening salt bags to that. That's a personal vendetta against salt. I'm sorry, I brought you into that. But you can really just use a 1/4 cup of salt and spread it on any surface that you have, and it should be able to do what you want it to do. So using salt sparingly will help us with the amount of pollution going into our drainage. Like I said, the 4th one deserves its own slide because it can be quite complicated. We're going to talk about rain gardens. You need to do your research on them. They are very unique to everybody's situation. But the nice part is that they can be created anywhere you have pooling water on your property. So if you have that pesky wet spot that you can never seem to get lawn to grow in, it's a great candidate for a rain garden. Some things you want to consider is how far you want to put your rain garden from your downspout. That's going to change the way that you need to direct water to the rain garden. You also want to consider your soil type. Is it clay? Is it sandy? Is it loamy? How quickly is the water draining? Because that's going to tell you how deep you need to dig your rain garden. One thing we don't want to do with rain gardens is have pooling water. That can invite pests such as mosquitoes that we do not want at our homes. Although hopefully you get some nice dragonflies visiting and they'll eat them. So we need to consider some of these things. And like I said, they're very unique to each and every one of your yards. But how do they help us? They increase water filtration. They help prevent flooding. They enhance beauty, and they provide habitat for wildlife. So unlike the rain barrel and the permeable surface and picking up trash, these help provide habitat for wildlife, which is a really big portion of what we're trying to accomplish here today. So when you create a rain garden, you are creating essentially a miniature wetland. And wetland plants are unique. The type of plants you find in wetlands are unique. And so when you create one, you open yourself up to this whole new palette of plants you get to play with and learn and grow with. You also open yourself up to a whole host of different interactions with nature itself. Like I said, you're inviting those dragonflies to your yard. You're inviting different species of birds to your yard. So rain gardens in and of themselves are unique. They're unique to you. You can create them exactly how you want them to, but I do urge you to do your research before you make one. There is a really great resource on the Chicago Botanic Garden website, and it was made by the extension office in Wisconsin, our friends. And it's about 12 pages long, but it really walks you through the calculations on slope, on depth, on how far from your downspout you want this, what kind of materials you're going to need, how high your berm needs to be. I mean, this goes on and on and on. And like I said, I could create a whole other presentation on it. So now I want to talk about other ways that we can bring native plants into our landscapes. There are so many different ways that these landscapes, bringing these plants to our landscapes can help us and help the ecosystem. I'm going to start off with my favorite reason to bring native plants to your garden, and that is through the connection to place and time. So through my career, I've had the ability to learn the plants, know at what time they come up, what time they bloom, who their friends are, who comes to visit them, friends as in pollinators, birds, wildlife. And they can connect me to exactly the place I'm in. So is this a wet space? Am I seeing cardinal flower? If I see cardinal flower, I know it's wet. I know it's sunny. I know that maybe there's a ruby-throated hummingbird somewhere. So these plants have this really powerful ability to connect us to exactly where we are. And one of my favorite ways I've seen this done, somebody else explained this, is in the book Braiding Sweetgrass. How many of you have read it? Yeah. Okay. Robin Wall Kimmerer is a scientist, a botanist, and a member of the Potawatomi tribe. She is fantastic. If you haven't read the book and you're not inspired after my presentation, she will get you in the nicest way possible. And so in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, she has a chapter called Asters and Goldenrods. And in this chapter, she describes her journey into science. You know, she's a young woman. She's going to college for the first time. She's talking to her new counselor, and he's just a straight up biologist. And he says, well, why do you want to get into biology? Why do you want to learn this stuff? And she says, well, I want to know why the goldenrods and asters look so beautiful together. And later on, we learn why she's interested in this interaction. And so I'm going to read a little part of this book to you. It always makes me happy to hear it. So she says, I like to imagine that they were the first flowers I saw over my mother's shoulder as a pink blanket slipped away from my face and their colors flooded my consciousness. I've heard that early experiences can attune the brain to certain stimuli so that they are processed with greater speed and certainty, so that they can be used again and again, so that we remember. Love at first sight. Through cloudy newborn eyes, their radiance formed the first botanical synapses in my wide-awake newborn brain, which until then had only encountered the blurry gentleness of pink faces. I'm guessing all eyes were on me, a little round baby, all swaddled in bunting, but mine were on goldenrod and asters. I was born to these flowers, and they came back for my birthday every year, weaving me into our mutual celebration. I know I kind of butchered reading it, public speaking, but I don't know how there is not a way you don't feel something after listening to that. And it's very clear that her very first encounter with these plants changed her life. It ended up becoming that kind of adaptive, effective response, right? She internalized that and then became a scientist because of it. So these plants have this very unique way of pushing us to bringing us to exactly where we are in space and time. Okay, that was gorgeous. And I just can't, that, like I said, it's my favorite part about native plant gardening. But there are some other things that we need to know. So this picture is actually pasted right up on the wall at the History Center. So if you can't really see what's going on, you can always go walk right up to that one and really take a look. But here we are looking at prairie roots. They are beautiful, they are long, they are fibrous. And these beautiful, long, fibrous roots, they do so much for us. They sequester carbon, they are drought tolerant, so that means less watering for us, and they hold our soils together through that weaving effect that these rhizomes have. Here in Lake Forest, that erosion control is incredibly important. My time in landscaping was in this area, and time again, I walked onto ravines and bluffs that were in desperate need of these root systems. They were slipping away, down into the water, and it was going to be really hard and costly to come back from it. So one of those ways you can prevent that from happening is bringing these beautiful long roots onto your property. And then we have ecosystem function and fragmentation. I did a presentation before where I talked a lot about fragmentation, and so that word just kind of like rolls right off the tongue. So native plants, they obviously help support ecosystem function. There's a couple different ways that they bring support to us. So it's through supportive services such as cycling nutrients and forming soil, to regulating services, which I've already kind of covered, which is controlling flooding and purifying water and helping with pollination. I want to take a moment to talk about cycling nutrients, because a lot of times people think that we're cycling nutrients through the dieback of plants. Those plants, they come and they go, they add to the soil. We get these beautiful loamy soils that we have in Illinois. But another part of nutrient cycling is the food chain. And so over the years, certain plants, certain animals have adapted to be together. These insects, these birds, they need these plants in order to survive. So if we don't have the native plant that feeds the native insect, that then feeds the native bird, then feeds the native bat, snake, fox, coyote, whatever, we lose that whole chain of reaction. We lose that nutrient cycling, and we lose that service to us and to them. And then another thing to talk about is this idea of pollination. And so Again, these species, these plant species, they evolved with the wildlife. And a lot of our plants, you know, such as Chelone, white turtle head, it has a special shaped flower that only allows a certain type of bee to squeeze its cute little butt right in there and grab that pollen. I know I said butt. It's really adorable if you ever get the chance to see it. So we have these special adaptations, and when we remove these plants, when we get this warming of our climate, of our you know, of our Illinois, we lose these special plants like the Chelone. We lose that bee that pollinates it, and then we lose the ability to produce food. And so this is huge. Bringing these plants to your house to provide these ecosystem functions is majorly important, and I cannot stress it enough. And then my final point on why we need to bring these things to our homes is because it reduces fragmentation. And so this map, I think, does a really good job on showing how much privately owned land there is versus how much publicly owned land there is in the United States. And so I believe it was Doug Tommy. He put this in his stat in his book, and he said there's 83% of the land in the United States is owned privately. Now, a lot of us, we visit the national parks, we say, the world is still wild. It is still beautiful, and it is still functioning. It's okay. I can kind of take that stress off of me for a minute. But this map really shows you that these wildlife, these plants, they need us because there are so many gaps across the United States. They need a safe place to find those ecosystem functions. They need that place to land, to get food, to get shelter, to get water. Okay, now on to the fun stuff. This is part 3 of the presentation. So now you're inspired. You know where we are, what's happening with the climate, you know why we're bringing native plants to our homes, and now you want to know how we get started on doing this. Probably a lot of you in here are gardeners already, and you might already have some native plants dappled in. And as you know, those plants require some different considerations. And so whenever I am starting to plant a garden for myself, for a family, for a client, I have to start with questions. So we need to ask ourselves questions like, what are the site conditions? What kind of sun, soil, and moisture do I have here? A very important question is, how tall do I want these plants to be in my yard? Prairie plants can reach up to 7 feet tall, 9 feet tall. I feel small in those spaces. Am I trying to add to a current design? We don't need to rewrite. We don't need to bulldoze everything. We can add these plants right into the landscape that you currently have. Are you trying to attract certain pollinators, certain birds, different types of wildlife? If you are, that's going to limit that palette that we have to choose from. Some other important considerations are what's your budget? Everybody has a budget, and that might tell you how much you can do at one time. You can always phase out your planting plans. You can start in one space and work your way through it. You can decide you want to start from seed or from plugs, or you want to go all the way with those gallon plants. That's fantastic, but you really should ask yourself that question before you start. And then I would say one of the most important pieces here is, who is going to manage this space? Is it me? Is it my friend? Is it a service? And that will also tell you how complex you can make your design. So now we're looking for inspiration. Okay, I don't know that many plants. I don't know that many native plants that I can bring to my house that are the right size, that fit my budget. We're going to find inspiration all around us. So we can visit our local nature preserves, shout out Lake Forest Open Lands. Also Lake County Forest Preserves, Cook County Forest Preserves. We have so much access to incredible nature. As we go forward in this presentation, the pictures that I talk about as the preserved spaces, those were taken in Northbrook and Northfield, so right around the corner. Pick up a book. I brought my favorite books with me. So number 1, Prairie Up by Benjamin Bott. He is amazing. He's from Nebraska. He has a design style that I really jive with. This book, it's not very big. It's colorful. It's full of design layout plans for all sorts of different types of soil conditions, sun conditions. You can see I put notes all over this thing because it changed my life. And then another one a little closer to home is The Gardener's Guide to Prairie Plants by Neil Diblow and Hillary Cox. Neil, he works for Prairie Nursery, which is in Wisconsin. But this book, let's say you're like, I'm going all the way. I'm changing my entire half-acre lawn into a prairie. This is going to be your book. This is your friend. There is a how-to guide on how to do that. And chances are you're doing that from seed. So don't get too excited that it's going to grow up really quickly. It's going to take a minute. And then also, as I touched on before, this is something that we can do as a community together. So reach out to those around you. University of Illinois Extension has a really great program called Conservation at Home. If you have questions, they are so nice. They are so willing to help you. And you can also get a designated sign once you have this beautiful space. Reach out to local businesses that specialize in native plantings. Okay, shameless plug. I worked for Mariani. They have a great natural areas program. Taking them back. There are other companies around here as well that do really beautiful designs. The Spirited Gardener that's run by Julia Bunn. She's in Evanston. And then you have Red Stem Nursery. They do some of the most incredible rain gardens and bioswales I've ever seen. They're based out of Chicago. And they have their own plant nursery as well. So you can buy plants from them. Okay, we're talking to our community members. We're gonna go talk to our neighbor. We've always loved their beautiful native plant garden. So we're marching ourselves down to their house and we're having a conversation. Or you can reach out to me because I know I'm so exciting and I'm available to you for any questions at any time. So you're like, Hillary, we have not done any planting. I haven't seen anything pretty other than the pictures. Why so much planning? I cannot stress it enough how much planning you should do, how much research you should do. You're not going to walk away from listening to me tonight knowing exactly what is going to be planted at your house, when it's going to bloom, all, you know, all that jazz. I cannot tell you that. Each and every one of you has different situations, but we have the resources to figure it out. So we're going to take our time. We're going to take our time prepping. We're removing all of the weeds from the space. We do not want that competition because I'm going to tell you right now, native plants are fierce competitors against each other. But when they're put up against weeds, they have a relatively hard time battling it out. So we're removing the weeds, and shout out to Julie, know before you dig. If you don't know what's under the ground, give them a call. And then we're going to always consider right plant, right place, design principles. So this is, again, knowing your site conditions. And then also, we are going to have intention and care around our designs. So we're putting our tall friends in the back. And what I mean by that is we're not putting one of those tall floppy plants right up on the sidewalk. It is going to flop over. It's going to make your neighbor frustrated that they have to step over it. They're going to think they're going to get a tick because it's laying there on the sidewalk. Native plant gardening is still new. It is still a new trend. And we need people to like it. And so we're going to take some of those principles from older designs and we're going to put them in here. Low growing things in the front, tall growing things in the back. You can also take this as in the mullet situation. Your front of your house looks like a normal, beautiful house. The back of your house looks like an amazing wild prairie that everybody wants to be in and is so excited to see. And again, we're having that maintenance plan because native plants are fierce competitors amongst themselves. They are dynamic, they are self-seeders, they spread by those beautiful rhizomes. They're going to shoot up all over the place. And either you need to feel in your heart that you're okay with that, or you need to have a very intensive maintenance plan to keep those things under control, because the prairie plants or the shade plants that you put in year 1 are going to move and spread around and look different by year 3, year 5, year 7. So as I said, Benjamin Bott, he is kind of one of my favorite landscape designers. And I did not realize until I read his book that I liked matrix design so much. Matrix design focuses on ground covers such as grasses, sedges, and low-growing forb species such as like wild ginger and pussy toes and Jacob's ladder to create kind of a living green mulch. And then we dapple in these beautiful forbs all around it to make it feel a little bit more wild, like you've walked out into this beautiful preserve. This one's a Northfield preserve. So you can see this matrix design in inspiration from a preserve. I'm going to show you a couple more examples of that and how they translated to a garden. So the vertical photo is a picture I took at Somme Prairie Grove. That's off of Dundee Road. We all love that space if we know it. And I like to call that area a rainbow on the ground. So you can see the butterfly milkweed in the front there, the lead plant, that purple colored plant right next to it. Behind it is a species of Rudbeckia. Behind that, you see these big white leaves of prairie dock, and so on and so forth. And there's this inner mixture of grasses. So then you see this kind of interpretation of that. This person took low-growing junipers because they're the shortest. They put them on the outside closest to us. The little bit taller growing butterfly milkweed behind it. And then to get that beautiful color clash again of that purple and that orange, they put purple prairie clover behind it. And so you can directly see the inspiration from preserve to garden here, and this is a form of matrix designing. Another example here, this was taken, where was that? With the brown-eyed Susans there. That was at Watersmeet. So that is in Northfield. And you can see the Rudbeckia species again, the rye species of grass there hanging off, the goldenrods popping in and amongst it. And thankfully, I had seen Jeff Lorenz with Refugia Design present at a sustainability conference. And I reached out to him specifically for this presentation to ask for some pictures from him. So this is an interpretation of his of a similar situation of a savanna in somebody's front lawn. You have switchgrasses, you have coneflowers, you have Rudbeckias, and they're all coming together to create this very naturalistic planting, but it still looks intentional. So one of the ways that we take these pictures from the preserves and we interpret them into these gardens is through layout designs. And I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. This is a moment where you can take your creativity to whatever level you want. And I'm going to show you kind of the contrast between something really simple, something kind of a medium design, and then something that takes it to a whole other level. So this is a nice layout because it is giving you so much information. You know it's 20 feet wide, you know it's full to partial shade, you know you have clay soils, you know exactly how many plants you need. You kind of know where they're going based on the colors here. This, I would say, is kind of that medium effort layout design. Now, my friend and former coworker, Alex Barnes, She takes layouts to a whole other level. Just stop for a moment and enjoy the art. Whenever she has time to design a garden, she likes to make a watercolor layout. And so she sits down with her paints. She knows when the plants are gonna bloom. She knows how many of each species she's gonna have. And then she creates a palette right off to the side that she pulls that inspiration from. This is, again, that moment that you can feel the creativity in this process, really make it your own and enjoy what you're seeing, what you're doing, and what you're feeling. Okay, don't laugh at me, but this is how I designed. Oh no, Microsoft Paint. That's the high quality system I'm using here, but it works perfectly fine. I pick different shapes to represent different plants. I use different colors so I know what is gonna be what color where. And I like to do just kind of a general idea of where things go, and then the day of the planting, I mess around with the plants in the field. I take that idea and I let the land speak to me, and I'm like a mad scientist out there doing beautiful work. So again, this is up to you how far you want to take this, but I wanted you to see a different way to be creative in this process. So where are we buying these plants from? I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to avoid the big box stores. A lot of times they're cultivars and they're non-natives. They might say native plant on them, but they're going to be native to Arizona. And we don't want that here. It's not going to work very well. So there, you can find a lot of local sources. Like I mentioned, there are so many nurseries around here that do native plantings, and they're going to use plant genetics that are from this area. Plant genetics are important because of that evolution that we have seen over time. And then we also have the shameless plug to the Lake Forest Open Lands plant sale, but there are also plenty of other plant sales going on at this time in the fall. And there's also seed shares you can be a part of. If you don't really want to put all the effort into plugging things in, go out and buy some seed, throw it around, feel like a field fairy, enjoy your time. And I will mention Prairie Moon Nursery and Prairie Nursery, they're two different things. Prairie Moon Nursery is in Minnesota and Prairie Nursery is in Wisconsin. I love both of those websites. If you are trying to figure out what plants go in soil type, sunlight, if they grow in your state, how tall they're going to be, there are great ways to really get into it and start learning these plants on your own and purchasing from responsible growers as well. So I want to thank you. I feel like maybe it's been a little long for joining me tonight. I want us to really understand what our landscapes can look like, how they can be beautiful, how they can support ecosystem function, how they can manage stormwater runoff, and just downright be beautiful. I mean, look at that. That's gorgeous. Again, this is Refugia Design. They're an East Coast company, but truly some inspiring work from a very progressive leader. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you feel inspired. I hope you feel like you understand some of those analytical issues. And I'm open for questions.
Do the native plants nurseries, like, are they using neosites?
No, not all of them.
If I call and say, do you use neosites? Yeah. They have to tell me.
They'll let you know. Prairie Moon and Prairie Nursery, I think, are two very companies that are pretty much against them. So you should feel comfortable purchasing from them, but they also have great customer service. So they can help you out. It's something that they put in the plants when they're growing to prevent disease and insects. And so it can really prevent those pollinator interactions that we want to see in our own gardens.
Does it even actually kill the insects?
It can, yeah. Anything else?
The book that you brought up about think it was sweetgrass, could you repeat this?
Oh, braiding sweetgrass?
Braiding.
Yes, correct.
Does Open Lands have a page on their website that lists some native species?
Right now we have the plant sale going on, and you can find that in our events page, and it'll take you to the plant sale, and in there are all native plants. But that's a good suggestion.
I mentioned it before, and
yeah,
I think it'd be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, it could be thousands, but you're just a handful of
Yeah.
species that are native to our region. I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, I like that suggestion. Thank you.
I have a related question on that. I've been given a list by my landscaper of what they plan to do. How can I check, like in a database, whether it's native or not?
You're
a lot of databases online. I just don't know.
Yeah, so your best bet is going to be searching that Latin name. Hopefully they give you Latin names for the plants and not just common names. The common names can be misleading, and common names can, they can be crossed through of many different species. So ask them, number one, for Latin names, and then search those Latin names. Illinois Wildflowers is a great website, and they have range and habitat maps included. And if you're having issues, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to look at the list.
Well, my big frustration are the rabbits. So do you have any suggestions? And deer as well, but mostly rabbits.
Yeah, deer and rabbits, those pests. It's hard to prevent them from coming in. There are some products you can use, like liquid fence, that will help deter them, but it will not stop them. Otherwise, you can put up small fences around your plantings. I know they're pesky and they get in. And it's also kind of sometimes unsightly, so it feels like it defeats the purpose. But yeah, if you don't want some physical barrier, I would go with the liquid fence. It's really stinky though, so beware.
The other thing related to the topic of climate change and like the change the zone is changing. So what we consider native plants, is sort of evolving, and I mean it is what it is. So is that okay, or do you consider these, like there's some like plants that are native to Southern Illinois and they're moving their way up? You just let it be.
Yeah, so right now the shift hasn't been that impactful on the species. We are having the ability to grow different species, and things are moving. In my opinion, they're not moving that quickly naturally. To prepare our gardens though, I'm not against bringing plants from further south, further north to help with that issue. I would just try to make sure I have a really nice balance of the two. And over time, they'll do that kind of natural competition. So you'll see who wins.
I'm gonna plant some flowers. So plants smaller. Is it stupid to do it because of the cicada?
I haven't heard too much about forb damage with the cicadas coming to town. Most people are worried about shrubs and trees, young shrubs and trees. And so I do not feel confident one way or another saying they will or will not. But I know at our plant sale, we're going to be offering cicada netting to anybody who purchases. And so we got a 6.5 by 100 foot roll of insect netting for, I think it was like $34. Obviously you don't need that much. Well, I don't know how big your planting is, but chances are you don't need that much. So if you're very concerned, there is a cheap way to help deter them.
For those who are excited about new plants, but don't quite know where to start, do you have suggestions for where to start?
So I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions. When you say where to start, are we talking about like small scale planting? We're talking about foundation plantings. Where do you want to see this impact?
I don't know,
Yeah.
but I know that this sort of like, would you just go buy a native plant and try it type of thing, or do you think it's important to try to pick an area to start with, or?
Yeah, so I would really try to plan it out, because you want these things to be successful, and, there are so many sources out there that can help you with this, and so, I would pick an area and make it small. I would pick a few number of plants. We don't want to go crazy. If you don't know a lot about native plants, it will make it hard to maintenance. And yeah, I would start small and grow. If you decide I love this and I think it's amazing, keep making that spot bigger and bigger and bigger, and soon enough you won't even have a yard anymore. Yeah.
You mentioned the research paper on rain gardens. What's the source of that?
Yeah, so that was I found it on the Chicago Botanic Garden website, and it was a manual made by the University of Wisconsin Extension Office. You're welcome.
Final questions?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
The Chicago Botanic Garden website also has a tutorial for wrapping.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's great. You need to cinch it at the bottom so they don't get in. Wrapping for the cicada. So wrapping your small trees and shrubs.